you for joining in. My name is Arun, and you have started watching the AI with Arun Show. So today we have a very, very special guest, Aditya Singh, who I like to call as Adi. Adi, thank you so much for joining in today.
My pleasure, Arun. And just for the viewers, Arun and I are reconnecting after almost 20 years. Having, of course, been in touch online, but sort of seeing each other after 20 years. So it's a pleasure, Arun, to be here.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So let me talk to you first about Aditya Singh and what Tapfin, the company where he's the founder, does. So across the world, access to capital remains one of the most critical barriers to the adoption of electric vehicles. This is actually a global problem. In India, one company is attempting to change this. Tapfin, the company that Aditya founded, provides financing solutions to the underserved sectors of the society and assists them in creating means of income generation for themselves and their employees. They aim to promote entrepreneurship and enhance the positive impact on the environment in India while enabling ownership. Their vision is to be a leader in green financing, enabling India's ambition to be net zero by helping with the financing opportunities and that support sustainability. Aditya, my dear friend here, he is a co-founder and CEO of this company, Tapfin. Previously, he was co-founder at CreditMate that was acquired by Paytm. Wow, that's such a wonderful achievement, Adi.
Thank you.
He is truly a serial entrepreneur. He worked at Ernst& Young, KPMG, Cedar Consulting, ICICI Bank. He has almost 20 plus years of experience in tech, in business development, data sciences, business and strategy consulting, international banking, and payments. Aditya is an MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur. Adi, so you've had such a fascinating ride, Adi. You're such a specialist, and you have seen the technology side, you've seen the payment side, banking, um, and that brings you to a very natural way of why you would take a career step in such as payments in sustainability. But before that, Adi, talk to my viewers about what inspired you early on in your career. How did you land to where you are today?
So, yeah, interesting journey. And when you read all that out, for a second I thought, is that really me? I didn't. It seems like I've done a lot of work, but I always tend to believe that I'm just sort of starting out, right? Uh, I had this inherent need, Arun, to always do something new, right? So that's why when you sort of go through my profile on LinkedIn or what I've done, you realize that it's always been 2.5, 3 years at one place and sort of move on to the next one. I think this ability or this need to always go and do something new and really be involved in the build stage of something is what really excites me, right? So that's essentially the journey that you've seen, right? Uh, I think I'm the sort who really likes to find the problems that need solving, and then get into the depths of how do you go about solving it, and multiple things that I've done along the way is sort of testament to that, right? At ENY, I was part of the team that helped launch RuPay with the National Payments Corporation of India, which was the first debit card scheme, for India. And then, of course, NPCI has done stellar work in the payments and the infrastructure space in India. Uh, one of my first startups, CreditMate, was in the used two-wheeler financing space, right? And I think we were the first in the country to set up a used two-wheeler financing platform, working with NBFCs and essentially providing access to capital to people who want to buy used two-wheelers, which you would think is not an asset that anyone would want to take risk exposure on, right? That pivoted to creating India's first debt, collections tech stack, right? And that was born out of us doing probably a really good job on underwriting on the used two-wheeler platform, and then realizing that the performance of the portfolio was really good because we managed to build something on the collection side. And then when COVID hit, I think the recognition that you need to think of collections, which is the more unglamorous part of the lending funnel, but that's an equally important part of the of the loan life cycle. Sometimes I say lending is really the art of collecting, right? So having said that, then of course Paytm came in as an investor during the journey, and they acquired CreditMate, in 2021. I was looking to do my next thing. Sustainability was always of interest, right? When we were doing used two-wheeler financing, I started looking at the electric vehicle space. That is when some of the large, especially on the two-wheeler side, there are a few very interesting companies like Ather, and Ola sort of coming into the electric space. And that's when back in 2019 is when we started to sort of look at the space a little bit. And then when 2023, my two co-founders, Tanuja and Pramod, who spent 18, 20 years out of at HSBC doing multiple things in the bank. And then they spent 1 year at a EV logistics company, and they were coming out of that company to set something up. We said we'll sort of get together with their deep understanding of financing and how regulated entities work, compliances and regulations, and how do you sort of work under that? How do you underwrite better? How do you assess and manage risk? And my limited understanding of how do you set up a tech stack, how do you employ data sciences, how do you set up a startup and sort of run with that to almost an acquisition. I think that's been the journey, driven by this need to always sort of build something, or if I see a problem, trying to find a solution. Uh, Makes me, I'm sure makes me a little more uh, unstable as compared to what a lot of people, was saying. Incidentally, Tanasa is also, my wife. We're both from XLRI. She was my junior there. And Pramod, both of them extremely stable, 18, 20 years at the same organization. Um, my longest has always been my own startups and never working for someone else. Right. So I think that's where this comes from. This inherent need to sort of go out and build stuff.
So wonderful, Adi. But going back, what really inspired you? Did you have any coach mentors who told you that, Adi, this is what you should be focusing on because you are a problem solver? You identify a problem, solve it, and move on to the next problem. Or did you sort of uncover yourself your own way?
I don't think I had mentors along this journey. I've had the privilege to see a lot of good people really at work, and I think at different organizations, different people have said something. I always remember something that when I joined ICICI Bank, Mr. Kamath was there for one of the inductions, uh, and he clearly said we're not really building a financial services organization. We're building a tech company that offers financial services. Right now, this was back in 2004-5, right, which is very very novel way of thinking. And that's probably the first time I realized how strong tech really was. When you and I, tech to us at that point was limited to Yahoo groups and emails, right? Facebook had just sort of come along. I think it was still Orkut at that point in time. Makes you realize how old we are. Uh, you know, but I think so. It's not like he mentored me or anything, but the fact that here's this someone who's building an organization or has built an organization with backbone of technology. That's why I think really I started to appreciate the way technology works. At ICICI, I was a product manager for an international remittances product, which again was trying to, essentially look at how do you do payment flows, using technology. Uh, Again, at ENY, working with NPCI, again was seeing how do you build the rails for a country, how do you build infrastructure which allows people to build on top of it. Uh, how can people sort of come together and try to create something which has national impact, right? What NPC in a sense is doing is has a lot of national impact, both in terms of their own domestic card scheme, which I think was a great moment for India, and I think UPI is something that's appreciated across the board, and we're exporting technology, right? So we're exporting UPI as an infrastructure and as a specification, right? Which is a great moment. So I think these things that I've seen personally, on how leaders sort of take charge of organizations and lead, and say what is the strategic direction, in which we should almost see the future. So how are they sometimes they're oracles who seeing the future that's not visible to you, uh, but it's important for you also to then mold your personality into those, right? uh, it's not for everyone, right? And I keep on saying entrepreneurship especially is seems very very glamorous from the outside, but it's an extremely difficult task, once you get into it. It's daily grind, and you have to be ready for it. Don't get in it for the glamour of it. But always do keep on looking at how people are solving problems, right? How people are scaling industries, how people are scaling startups, how people are scaling companies, how people are looking at solving problems. Right, there are multiple ways to solve a problem. What's the most efficient way and has the maximum impact? I think that is what is most critical, and that's how I think Tapfin also sort of started. Right, we're saying we all three of us realize that sustainability is very high impact, right? And it's not a choice, right? Um, you can choose to buy an expensive iPhone or something, but you cannot choose to ignore the sustainability problem for the longest time. And therefore someone has to really go out and start solving for this. You cannot be armchair thinkers and armchair activists and not do anything about it, right? uh, and then when you look at what the society is signaling, what governments and institutions are signaling, they're clearly signaling clean energy, right? They're clearly signaling decarbonization and mobility, right? You just have to pick those up and say, how do you take these signals that you're getting from society, from markets, from individuals, from governments, from institutions, and then create products which takes that from the macro real expectation to a micro delivery, right? Um, that's what again excited me about this space, about sustainability, and in general how I've sort of tried to build my startups and
Yeah, wonderful, Adi. So you spoke about a couple of things here, right? So you spoke about the art of problem solving, because I believe it's truly an art, right? There's no
yeah.
one magic sauce or that fits into every problem, not a cookie cutter approach, right? And then you also spoke about how you're inspired by Kamath. At the same time, there are also from macro factors to a micro delivery. So talk to our viewers about some of the advice that you would have to your younger self if you were to look back and think, here is how I could have solved the problem differently, or here is
Hmm.
a different kind of a challenge statement, problem statement that I might have taken to maybe come to a very different outcome.
Well, I would have started earlier. I think I spent a lot of time in the industry to sort of start my first startup. I think I would have started earlier. One advice I would give is, and a mistake that I keep on making even today, is the importance of team, right? I think we tend to focus a lot on an individual person or an individual leader or an individual founder. I think one realization that I've had is it's never about that one person, right? It's about your ability to find the right people along on your journey, right? To know your own shortcomings and know this is something that I'm good at and this is something I'm not good at, right? And therefore find people who complement and supplement your skills, right? I think very often people make a mistake of thinking that they know everything, and they want people in their teams who would listen to them and follow their diktat in a sense, right? Uh, but that means you're not really. I think, as Steve Jobs once said, right? If you're the smartest person in the room, then you hired wrong, right? I paraphrasing, of course. Uh, but I think that's the one learning I've had. The immense value of team, and it's also one of the hardest things to do. I don't. You and I think when we were in Excel, I don't think we appreciated the organizational design and organization structure classes, right? But I think as you grow, and I'm sure you also would have similar feedback, or when you want to talk, is is the how true that is, that getting the organization culture, organization structures, organization ethos, how critical that is. Second thing I do is definitely get into technology even sooner, right? Um, I think there's a lot of great work that's being done on the tech side, which comes out of which hits monetization or the markets very late, right? Or there are people who are trying to solve it, and they have to spend a lot of time before they sort of come to market, right? And there is technology available at different points at different countries and globally that you think can be changed, structured, created use cases out of, customized for specific needs that can serve your specific needs, or your country's needs, etc., right? uh, I think I would get into the tech space a little earlier than I have, and that's a continuous struggle. That as we continue to build Tapfin and even earlier CreditMate, uh, there's the technology is changing so quickly. That to sort of adapt to it, so that you have to be very very agile, right? And again, knowing that you're not going to solve all of it, right? Get the right people to solve it for you. So that's two things. I think you realize the importance of teams. And just be very very agile and quick with technology.
Yeah. So I think I would just point out that what you said about the team is so spot on. So in one of my previous podcasts, we had another founder who spoke exactly of similar things. How important it is to have the right team in place. And truly, if you are the smartest person in the room, it's time for you to change that room, to move to a
Yeah,
different room where you're not the smartest. So
that's true.
very very spot on, very spot on. And no wonder I see that why you have been able successfully to create these companies, because of the kind of team structures you're able to put in place along with your co-founders.
Yeah,
So wonderful, wonderful, Aditya. So Aditya, with that, let's move on to the second segment of our show, which is about the company that you founded. I know we have been talking
Hmm.
about Tapfin, so let's just
Yeah,
jump right in. So, what problem are you trying to solve, Aditya? I know we briefly spoke
yeah,
about sustainability, electric vehicles, but talk to our
right.
viewers about what purpose the company is, what problems you're trying to solve.
So as we very briefly discussed, I think sustainability is something that gets spoken of quite frequently, and quite loftily, but very few people sort of are doing enough work in the market to solve for it, or even to have a pathway to the sort of goals that the international forums have created for themselves. India has its own set of goals, and even states in India have their own goals, right? So again, I said, there's a governmental societal push, but who's really going out and solve the nitty gritties or the nuts and bolts of this issue, right? If you look at sustainability, there are multiple verticals, right? You can start with transportation. There's this, of course, and solar energy or energy in itself. There's circularity, agri, e-waste, etc., right? But because, as I said, Tanuja and Pramod and their experience with logistics, we said while we want to be a larger sustainability platform, let's start with clean mobility and start, because transportation is a huge contributor to to emissions in globally and in India, right? So we said, why don't we solve the problem of clean mobility in the Indian context, right? Now, when you look at the market, and what happens is any new technology is adopted and deployed by innovators, by early adopters. You need new startups coming into this space to then one create the products on which could be the vehicle itself, the batteries. You need fleet operators to start to buy those vehicles and start to deploy. And then, because a lot of these players in the ecosystem are startups, SMEs, MSMEs in themselves, the first thing that's lacking is access to capital, right? Uh, and I can throw multiple statistics, but I won't do that here. For your audience. But India is traditionally starved for capital or institutional and formal credit for its SMEs and MSMEs and of course startups, right? So I said that's the first problem we'll solve. Again, not from a B2C perspective, because if Arun wants to buy a Tesla, for example, I don't need to really arrange for credit for them, right? But anyone who wants to deploy these assets for income generation. And that's why when you talked about Tapfin, was a lot about income generation, and that's something that we've done earlier with CreditMate also. So let's talk about a little bit about CreditMate before I come to Tapfin also, right? Why use two-wheeler financing? Back then in 2016, that is when the gig economy in India was sort of taking off, right? You had the likes of the Zomatos of the world and the Swiggies of the world really, sort of penetrating deeper into metros and into other cities, right? And one of the requirement, and then people like Urban Clap who are like, handyman services. The requirement for someone to, be able to provide services was a two-wheeler, right? You'll have a delivery person coming to your house, and there's a two-wheeler. Now, not everyone needs to buy a new two-wheeler, right? So we said, why is used two-wheeler not an asset class? Because when you have that, you can actually deliver more, right? Or you can do more services, offer more services. If you're a carpenter going to multiple places, you can just maybe do 3 or 4 more than if you had to use public transportation, right? So the genesis was even with CreditMate that the two-wheeler is going to make a significant impact on your income generation ability, right? It's the same with Tapfin. if I can arrange for capital for fleet management services, which service the likes of the Amazons and the Flipkarts and the Zeptos and Blinkits of the world, there's insatiable demand from these people to deploy these vehicles on the road. It could be two-wheeler, three-wheeler, cargo, etc. Right? But again, what is the problem? These fleet operators do not have access to capital. Right? So we said, why don't we play that role to start with in the clean mobility ecosystem to say, let's connect anyone who wants to buy a vehicle, largely a business, not an individual yet, a business that wants to buy these vehicles and deploy them for commercial or income generation activities, right? So if you're someone who's delivering goods, or if you're someone who's in people mobility, which is especially around employee transportation services, that's we'll arrange for capital for you. So on a single platform, I'll get all you guys, and I will get so essentially the demand of capital, and we will get the supply of capital on the same platform. Now, when you look at the ecosystem around in India, you'll realize that the EV ecosystem is still very, very nascent, right? Um, you might have vehicles, but what do you do with these vehicles, or how do you incentivize someone to buy the vehicle, even if the total cost of ownership works out, if you don't see the right charging infrastructure? Imagine if you and I today wanted to buy a vehicle, non-EV vehicle, or 10 years ago, we want to buy a ICE vehicle, right? And there was no petrol station, as they call in India. I don't know what they call it in the US.
In the gas stations. Yeah.
The gas stations, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't have one in like a 15-20 kilometer, vicinity, right, or radius, or if you see you have a couple, but they're always defunct, right? There's no gas available. You'd be very, very circumspect and scared about buying that vehicle, right? because how will I charge this, right? Which is fuel. Is the electricity is a fuel here, and then gas is a fuel there, right? So realize that is again a nascent ecosystem. So you have to also ensure that charging point operators need access to capital to deploy more, right? Um, and then this fleet guy operators also need matchmaking or market access, or the CPO, the charging point guys, also need market access to the fleet operators. And here we're talking to both of them. So while we're arranging for financing for them, there's so much more we can build on the platform around market access, right? Uh, then understand why are lenders sitting out of this. This is new technology. No one understands that. Commercial vehicle financing has always looked at residual value of the asset, secondary market of the asset. Does not exist. Even the OEMs cannot tell you in 5 years' time what's going to be the value of their asset, uh, or even the battery. So then, how do you then convince these or start to create products, or start to create underwriting models around what are the specifics of the EV industry, and give comfort to the lenders to then start creating programs for this industry, right? And that's where a bit of the data comes in, and how do you sort of create customized underwriting models. Then again, how do you get insurance companies to come in, right? Um, and then who are the other building blocks? So we're working with, as I said, fleet operators, charging point operators. We're working with dealers in the EV space. We're working with people who are creating secondary life or third life of the asset, which can be then redeployed into other assets, or even for other energy storage and deployment means. There are people in India who are now trying to. There are small OEMs, right, who are now, especially on the two-wheeler, three-wheeler side. There are a lot of local OEMs beyond just the Olas, Aethers of the world, which are a little more famous. There are a lot of three-wheelers, uh, new OEMs who need our support. So we said we'll. That's why we call ourselves a sustainability platform. We're starting with clean mobility. We'll get into solar with a similar modus operandi of getting multiple ecosystem participants on a platform and working on different propositions that work. But right now, the focus remains clean mobility. Massive problem to solve. If you look at India's goals, it's saying 60-70% of all new vehicles sold by 2030 should be EV vehicles. Zomato, which is one of the largest which does the largest deployment of fleet, wants entire 100% fleet to be to be EV by 2030. The government says 2034 all vehicles in India should be EV, right? So what you try to do is crunch the EV maturity into 10-15 years of a time frame where ICE has taken 40-50 years, right? Which means you need someone to come along and solve the different problems and get the different ecosystem participants and solve the problems. That is what Tapfin is trying to do by being multi-proposition, which is financial services. So it could be credit. We're building insurance. We're building pure aggregation, demand aggregation on the platform. We're looking to build out more technology side, which is around data. How can I use data to help the fleet operators, charging point operators, the insurers, the underwriters? So that's essentially what we're building on to be replicated across all other sustainability verticals over a period of time.
Wow, that's fascinating. Aditya. So, there are so many players involved. For somebody who's coming in outside, for people who probably may not be so much familiar with what sustainability. I mean, forget about sustainability for a minute, but what EVs in general mean. There are so many players that are involved, and what your platform is doing is trying to bring all of these players, right from the finance person to the insurance providers to the actual people who want to create a business, right, and monetize it, to the demand and supply. So there's so many things that you're doing, and this is fascinating. So I have to think of it this way. So if I'm, for example, let's say 25-year-old, thinking about how can I create, for example, let's say have 20 or 40 different EVs and deploy them in the service of Zomato, right? And I have
Yeah,
some, let's say 5 people who will go around in vehicles, these electric scooters or electric vehicles, and deliver food to the end
yeah,
consumers, right, to
yes.
people. So how should I get started on your platform?
So see, essentially, right now we're not doing facilitation to Zomato's, but that we essentially, if we will very soon run something called a driver come owner program, where driver itself becomes the owner of the asset. So we're not doing facilitation of maybe a job creation, or connect of a driver with Zomato's. But what you would do is you can actually go into a Zomato and say, I want to, I have 20 vehicles. What they would do is introduce you to either their fleets or onboard you as a fleet themselves, right? And then therefore, they are the ones who manage demand, and you are the one who has been supposed to do the delivery. Uh, Typically, because you would be a small fleet operator, you would not completely start to do everything on your own, because then you have to figure out charging infrastructure and a lot of other things, and the whole management of drivers. And around in India, driver management is a major problem. Driver attrition is a major problem. And those are real issues
Yeah,
in
yeah,
India.
yeah.
Uh,
No, I think, but my point being that if I were to, so I'm looking at your platform, right? Tapfin, was how do I enable myself or have access to this capital to buy those, 20, 30 vehicles, electric vehicals? Then how
yeah,
do I
so
get
it's
started with your platform?
So it's very digital. You sort of go to our platform. It's a very, very simple digital platform that you sort of, enter your details on. We're a fintech platform that's connected with all the key points that we're going to underwrite for you. We are not, a lending institution ourselves. We have partners on the back, right? So what we would do is collect basic information about you, do our credit assessment basis what you want to do. So again, who you are is one thing. And this is where our differentiation starts to come in the EV space, right? We will then say what is the use case that you want to use it for, right? My system will then, and this is where a little bit of AI also starts to come in. My system will say, fine, this person wants to buy 22 wheelers. If you can tell me which vehicles also, then my system will say, okay, these vehicles typically would give a range of around 60, 70 kilometers on a daily basis or on a single charge, right? The cost of these vehicles is X. Typically a Zomato in this, let's say, saying, this person wants to drive this in Bangalore. So typical contractual agreement between, let's say, Zomato and this fleet would be X amount of money. So I know that the income that they'll get from Zomato or any quick commerce, e-commerce would be X amount of money. The drivers in this city are typically going to cost this much when you deploy. This is going to be your cost of running. Your cost of charging would be approximately this much. And because I know how many cycles of charging you will need to go, because I understand the vehicle also. So I'll be able to say how much are you actually spending on it. If you're working on different, I know the market efficiency is at X% in the market. If you drive at market efficiency, therefore your cash flow is going to look like this. But if you increase your market efficiency by 10%, 12%, 15%, etc., then your efficiency goes up, which means your income generation goes up, which means the comfort for me as a lender also goes up, right? So these are some of the things which are very different. Traditionally, how it's going to happen is if someone comes in, says I want 20 vehicles, I have no history in logistics, I have no history drive with EV vehicles, I have no history at all with any sort of vehicles or with business. Very difficult that you'll get a loan, right? To do this, right? You probably have to put an FD or a collateral and then get something against that, right? Typically, lenders still want to look at historical data, which is your 3 years financial statements, right? What we want to do is saying very difficult for someone with zero to get a loan even right now. But let's say someone who has 1 year experience, right? What we have the ability to do now is to forward project, right? And forward project cash flows basis on a lot of things, right? Something I mentioned, which particular vehicle, what is the charging infrastructure in that city or the micro market look like, right? What is the income generation capacity basis, the contracts that have been signed, right? What is the cost of running that asset, right? What is the cost of servicing? If it does go for servicing, what is the history or TAT of the vehicle being serviced by that OEM or the battery, right? What is the residual value of the battery that we've sort of seen, right? Whose battery is it? Because battery is probably the most important part of the EV. So our underwriting engine takes all of these into consideration. So while a lender typically would have said no because you don't have 3 years vintage, we can then say, hey, now there's a possibility for us to not only project outwards of what the cash flows will be look like, and therefore you can do both receivables financing or cash flow based financing. We also now have the ability via IoT data, telematics data to monitor this at any given point in time, right? So I can now monitor. This is a completely integrated ecosystem. The vehicle itself, the battery itself, the charging itself, all of that is completely integrated. So you have data on this vehicle and the driver and everyone else in this ecosystem for 24 hours a day. You can generate millions and billions of data points, right? You can now go down to each individual cell and get some data around voltage of that cell, right? Which means that not only am I right now telling you what you should, I can monitor it and I can create early warning signals for you down to an asset level, right? Which was not possible in the ICE space, right? iSpace, I can put a GPS device in. I just know if it's running or not or what's going on, right? Here, I can even say here the charging behavior seems to be different, right? If I'm saying that you should be charging this one fast charging and then two small charging, slow charging, but this particular driver possibly or this fleet is doing multiple times and doing this fast charging, which means if the depreciation or degradation of battery was going to happen over 100,000 kilometers or 5 years, right now I'm starting to see over the last 6 9 months of performance that I think is going to degrade faster, right? So there could be a problem maybe with this particular vehicle or this particular driver or this particular fleet owner, which then creates a circular thing, right? Someone who's performing well, you can say, hey, I can start to take more exposure on this guy, right? He's sitting on 20 two-wheelers. We are now comfortable with giving him 50 two-wheelers, right? Because I see that they're running it efficiently and managing the assets well. While someone else are given exposure on 20, I can say definitely, possibly going to become, a default or a delinquent case. So we might want to take some early action on this, right? Uh, and then again, there are multiple things we're trying to build on the platform, which will help or give these recommendations to fleet operators themselves, right? We're looking at ways of, saying how do we embed even deeper into the fleet management system, right? I should Not everyone is aware of how the vehicle works, efficiently, right, or optimally. Can we give those recommendations on the platform saying, I think you fast charge it enough, the battery is probably degrading faster, we would recommend that you don't do fast charge for this, all right, or your charging should be like this, or we believe that you overloading the vehicle, which has a direct impact on the life cycle of the vehicle, right? This first time there's so much data available, Arun, that I think you really are in a position where you can do all of this, but the jury's out there on what is the right data. And then you and I both know this, having been in this field a little bit, is when you have too much data, you also find it difficult to sift the the between causality and just coincidence, right? Uh, so there's a lot of data being generated. Our aim is, and that's the aim of the platform, right, to create these models. How do I ensure that banks who are rejecting 95% of cases, the approval ratio start to increase because they understand this more, right? How do I ensure that the fleet operators drive their vehicle or manage their vehicle more efficiently, therefore increasing the life, right? How do I ensure that this battery operator who's really now saying I can give a 5 year, 7 year, 10 year warranty, multiple hundred thousands of kilometers driven, what help does he need from that ecosystem or from lending? How do I support him to ensure that, right? If there's someone who's saying I can build a network of charging and charging is really a real estate business along with the tech business, right? How do I then ensure or give them the right capital and the right market access to fleet operators, or the right data from the market, or where I'm seeing an increase in fleet operations, and therefore this city or this area might need more charging operations? How do I give them that sort of data and intelligence for all of them to start to sort of grow together? And that's the larger ultimate aim of the platform.
Yeah, wow, wonderful, Aditya. So, I mean, you just painted a picture of, what today looks like and also the future. And we'll talk about the future in a little bit.
Right.
So this is very interesting. You spoke briefly about the kind of data that's being generated and the kind of data that you guys are capturing to monetize it. So, talk to our viewers about, the data and the AI behind it, behind the technology that you are using at the platform.
So as I said, so when you underwrite, especially let's talk about the fintech side of it, right? When you underwrite, typically you underwrite the customer or the business, right? And that's how traditionally all, as they call in India, regulated entities, which are banks and BFCs, any lender does, right? I need to assess you when you, especially on the when you're doing unsecured lending, right? So I'm giving you a personal or credit card, just need to assess your repayment history, your current income, your cash flows, your liabilities, basically your personal balance sheet, from that perspective, right? And then essentially, if there's a credit score that you have, and that's a good credit score, then all of this becomes very simple, right? You have an income that's clearly reflected in your bank statements, and you have a credit score which reflects well. That's an easy thing to solve, right? But here's a new technology that lenders don't understand, right? And also, this is because it's very very nascent. Most players, as I said, if you leave out like the Tatas and the Citroens and the BYDs, who created large organizations, they don't really need us to solve anything for them, right? But if you leave these large guys out, as I said earlier, also, almost everyone is a small player or a startup or an SME, MSME in this space, right? Even someone with 500, fleet two wheelers as a fleet, or 1,000 two wheelers, still a small guy, right? Still a SME, MSME in this country, right? And again, when they go to raise money from lenders, again, if they have historical relationship with that lender, or there's decent 3 year balance sheet P&L, maybe they'll get access to some capital, which will also get exhausted by over 2 3 different lenders, right? What you now need to do in this space is, and that's because, as I said, the lenders traditionally can only look at this. When there's a new technology that comes in, I think the financial services industry is always sort of the last one to catch up, right? They wait for an industry to mature because they, and rightfully so, because they take exposure to it, because they have responsibilities that have a direct impact on society and the economy, right? Banks and BFCs cannot be cavalier with the money that they lend out, right? But they are willing. How do you, what do you tell them? How, and banks want to only see this, right? How do you reduce the risk for me? That is, if I as a lender am looking at this space and I'm saying EV is risky, right? What can you tell me that reduces my risk, and therefore there's more comfort that I have with lending in this space, right? Now, nothing solves this other than, the your ability to say, I can give you more early warning signals, or there's more data available that we can start small and keep on building on whether this data is creating some underwriting models for you which work differently, right? Now you're saying, fine, I don't understand if this EV vehicle, I don't understand battery, I don't understand the last life, right? Like, fine, if I'm now committing that there's a warranty of 5 year on this asset, why don't we take a loan which is maybe 3 years, which is inside the warranty of the asset, but over that 3 years I continue to give you confidence that the vehicle is performing as per your expectations, right? Or then how do I put in more and more variables around, as I said, operational efficiency? So then let's look at, the market is performing 60%. Can I find you those fleet operators that are performing at 80% efficiency, right? Which means that, but that's only data that can tell me that, right? Uh, and this is across, right? When you buy a vehicle, right from when it's active, when it's actually charging, when it's decharging, what's the state of charge, what's the state of health of the battery, what's the voltage and the current in individual cells, what's the temperature, how the terrain is affecting the battery, how the temperature is affecting the battery. Because and I'm sure you would have heard stories of batteries being burned, and those become massive Instagram stories, right? But they also do massive disservice to the industry from at least a lender's perspective, right? Because that gets ingrained in people's head, right? But then those are because the battery is not meant for 54, 55 degrees Celsius that you see in North India sometimes, right? Uh, but then is there a right OEM and the right battery for that temperature, right? So I'm saying, fine, you might not want to give it for the OEM A, and battery and vehicle, because you haven't seen them perform well in 55 degrees heat in Delhi. Uh, but these are the two OEMs and two battery manufacturers, and if there's a charging infrastructure is the correct one for this, that works for this terrain and this temperature, right? So here, as a lender, I'm giving you that much more information and saying, yes, this will happen, it will not go bad, right? What works in Goa, for example, or what works in Bombay is very different from Bangalore. What's very different, what's going to work in Delhi, right? Because the terrain's different, the load is different, the use cases are different. So you have to deploy that data, which makes sense to the lender, right? And you cannot say, I'm just going to deploy, multi crores or multi-million dollars at one go, right? You have to sort of start create programs for them, right? Really tell them what are they comfortable. Show them, explain them what this data means. I can give you a dump of data and you wouldn't know what to do with it, right? I can go to a lender or anyone in the industry and say, here's a dump of 500 vehicles performed over 6 months. These are millions of data points. Gives you state of charge, how this battery is depreciating. What will they do with that data, right? It's your bill. So, and how can you use all that data to create what makes sense from an underwriting perspective for the lender, which again could be very different for what makes sense for an insurance company, right? Or someone who's setting up a service infrastructure, someone who's setting up a roadside assistance, or someone who's saying, I'll sell extended warranties, right? Um, so from that data, you pick up what is important and relevant for all of these, and then you keep on sort of iterating and rebuilding and testing that model. And the best way of testing model on the lending side is, of course, looking at repayment history, right? uh, Inherently, people want to pay, no one wants to become delinquent, right? And if your income is linked to it, you definitely do want to pay, right? So if our metrics and what we, our hypothesis really work, you will see that in repayment history that really works, right? Then can you go down to individual level and say, if someone is not paying while someone else is paying, what's the difference between this, right? Is it operational efficiency? Is it the OEM? Is it the fact that the contracts were wrong? Is it the terrain? Is it the 50 kilogram is what you should be loading it with, but this person seems to be loading it with 80 kgs. All of those. I think that's where data plays a role. No one has really been able to figure this out completely yet. No one's been able to go to a lender and say, this really works, and this is the underwriting model with a lot of EV relevant data, right? That personalization needs to be done on vehicle data, on charging data, on driver, performance and driver behavior data, on the use case data. So suddenly what you're saying is, because all of this is available, I can create multiple models. Here's a business or a customer level, but now there's an OEM, whitelisted OEMs, and I know in them, intimately, right? Um, Also, then I know these chargers, and I can marry the charging behavior of with the actual the vehicle and how it's being driven, and therefore performance of the battery. Right? I can continually monitor the battery on a day-to-day or a second-to-second basis. Of course, you would not do that because then your load is extremely heavy from a server cost perspective. But you figure that out, right? Now you're not relying on 3 years balance sheet. You're not only saying, hey, I just need to look at the 3-year balance sheet, 3-year P&L, and assess the company. I I can still say if I'm not sure about whether I want to, give this company a loan, or I'm sitting on the sidelines, I need more information. That information starts to, or the comfort starts to come in from use case, from vehicle, from charging to, ability to monitor, all of those things. And that's where we are. Slowly start to use this data to increase approval ratios in the country, monitor the repayment behavior and performance of the vehicle and the charging and everything else. Over the next few years, I do believe, a secondary market will open up and redeployment or second or third use of batteries will go up, which will bring in a further impetus from lenders to get far more comfortable with this. So that is, there's lots we can talk about, but in a
Yeah.
nutshell,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But
But so the way I understand it is that in a typical lending situation, right, lenders will look for past history, and obviously here there's a lot of people who want to monetize, but they don't have access to that capital. That's the exact problem you're solving. And how you're solving it is that using a lot of technology inputs, right? There's a lot of data that's available, be it from the local market weather conditions, or be it from the electric vehicle or the batteries and so on. You are getting all the data. You're right, or you already have the data. You're marrying all the data together, and you're modeling them in a way that shows risk to the lenders, and how do you, and you're also giving a forward projection of how do I reduce the risk on a go forward basis, right?
yeah,
So that gives the lenders far more assurance that yes, I'm investing money in the right places, and then they can make a
absolutely.
call, right? It's a 5-year warranty, let me give a loan for only 3 years, right? Or something like that. So is my understanding accurate?
It's accurate. That's the way we are thinking of solving in this space. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, the way I see it is then for, you're opening access to capital, and because you're opening the access to the capital for a lot of emerging countries, and India is also an emerging country at this point of time, right? But for a lot of emerging countries where there's a lot of young population out there who are looking for, what do I do? And all of these guys are not going to become like a software developers or, right? They have to be involved in meaningful employment. And these are some
Right.
of the avenues by which meaningful employment can be provided. So you're solving a larger problem here, right? Sustainability happens to be the way, but then
Yes.
sustainability is indeed the way, right? And by providing access to capital, you're solving a tremendous employment problem as well.
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
if you look at, I think one of the spaces that are doing really well in India is logistics, right? Uh,
yeah,
and if you look at e-commerce, quick commerce, I think it's still very small percentage of total retail market in India, right? The penetration in tier 2, tier 3 is growing in this country, right? So logistics is a massive opportunity, and there's again which leads to massive employment opportunities and massive, monetization ability, right? Even here, if you're going to deploy EV into tier 2, tier 3 cities, there's ability to monetize. Small households who have, let's say, kirana shop can monetize by saying, I can be a battery swapping station, but I can actually can you help me set up a charging infrastructure, right? One or two charging stations here, right? Which is great monetization opportunities for small kirana stores. And you see that with at least the battery swapping infrastructure in the country, wherever it is small kirana shops, small mechanics who have now battery swapping infrastructure. So demand is being driven by tech startups, which will then sort of onboard the rickshaw drivers or the two-wheeler drivers, and then on their app display where their batteries are stored. And then you don't need to worry about fixed batteries. You just go to battery swapping there, right? Which is a great monetization ability, and that also facilitates, let's say, the 10-minute deliveries that that quick commerce guys are doing, because you can quickly just go and swap your batteries in and out, right? So again, so great employment opportunities, great monetization opportunities coming from the logistics space and the EP space in India.
Right. And that's exactly what Tapfin fits in, that if you're a small player, you have ready access to capital or easy access to capital using Tapfin, where historically,
Yeah.
if I go to a traditional lender, I would have a problem. Wow, wonderful. So this is like a really, really very impactful problem that you're trying to solve. This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think let's talk a little bit about, as you're creating this, you're obviously looking at a whole ecosystem, right? It's not just one player. What you're creating is a marketplace, right? And in order to create a marketplace, and you said it early on that about having the right team in place to solve a as impactful a problem like this. So talk to our viewers about what is your leadership style? How do you create teams? How do you take decisions?
So so let's just talk about our founding team a little bit, right? So Tanza, Pramod, and I, as I said, they're stalwarts in the financial industry space, understand financing, understand compliance, regulations, uh, like 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 no one else, um, and 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 also very skilled on different things, right? So Tanza amongst us is sort of like the hard taskmaster who really then sort of looks at execution really closely, right? So she's the person who you sort of said we need to do this, and she say I'll take this to closure, right? I will monitor, I will execute, right? Uh, Pramod is the very networked person, understands finance like much better than Tanaza and I do, and can find the solutions on how should I be talking to these lenders to ensure that this the marriage between the consumer and the lender sort of goes through, right? um, so very good at sort of structuring those things. I like to think of myself as a little more strategic. I don't more more sort of thinking where this organization need to go in a little bit. Of course, as I promote also do that, but I'm just saying, I tend to maybe think a little bit more on how do we deploy technology to sort of solve all these problems. My leadership style, I would say, is I let people sort of deliver on their own. I'm happy to be there to offer solutions, available all the time, but not micromanaging. I cannot micromanage. My leadership style is definitely not micromanagement. I'm not just saying that because maybe it's a good thing to see that I don't, as a leader, I don't micromanage. It's not in me, right? That's why my thesis is hire the right people and hire good people, and they will deliver for you, right? What is most important for you as the founding team is for you to articulate your vision to them really well, right? The stage where we are on so early on, and I'm confident and sure that with me, Tanisha, Pramod, and I, we can actually build and deliver something big, right? And meaningful, and something that creates impact and possibly leaves sort of a legacy behind, right? Uh, but it's for us to then articulate that vision to especially our early teams, get their buy-in and convince them and tell them that if they come along on this journey, they benefit from it also, right? This is also for their benefit, not just for our benefit, right? This is not just for benefit of the company. The company does well, they do well, right? And they do well, the company does well, right? So I think we spend a lot of time in trying to find the right people. We are around mid 20s right now. The team expected to go to 50, 60 by the end of next quarter. We make it a point, both all Thursday Pramod and I, that we during the hiring process, at least one founder speaks to each prospective. Right, it's also we are very actively involved in that process, uh, with a very very clear focus on finding people with passion, integrity. Because we believe that if you have those qualities, the three of us, I think, know that we'll be able to influence them enough, or convince them of this massive journey that they're going to go on, right? Uh, so I think that's essentially is how we're trying to build this team. It really is not just me. There's a three-member founding team. The leadership team is now also our CTO. And we're building out the CXO function. And it really is for the leadership team is to start to deliver. But I think the dynamic between Tanza, Pramod, and I is very good, that we understand who is good at what, right? And therefore we have extreme confidence in each other's ability to just give them that task and deliver. So yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question
You did,
completely,
you did,
but uh,
no, you did,
but
you
but
did,
that's
because
essentially where how no, so that's something I analyze my own leadership style. I said, but I think most important thing is how the three of us are building this company out.
yeah. One of the most successful attributes of some very successful companies is that the founders of the or the first set of people who are around the company, right? They all complement each other, not doing the same exact thing, but they all complement each other. And what you just articulated, Adi, is exactly that. Between the three founders, you guys all complement each other, right? Well, you guys all have your strength, but as a team, you guys complete the whole picture. All right. And
Yeah.
then the next level of team that you're setting up, they're all independent. They know how to, work on their own. So that way they're self-starters and can really, really help you expand the company beyond.
Right, right, and yeah, I think that's how the three of us also sort of got together. I think we recognize that, right? So as I said, very different skill sets. Pramod, uh, micro details, right? He would sort of get into those details and really sort of do things that I would probably tend to then sort of relook at, or tend to think that it's we don't need to sort of really get into it, right? And turn is up very very execution focused. So yeah, like we said, it's the team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, wonderful. I think with that, let's go into the third segment of our show, which is about looking forward. So you kind of spoke briefly about the kind of thing that you want to do in the future, but talk to us, viewers, a little bit more about two things in particular, right? One, where do you see the company go in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Mm.
And then the second part of the question is, how do you seeing AI? And you're using a lot of data, right? So naturally, there's a lot of
Yeah.
AI components in the product that you're building and will build. So talk to our
Hmm.
viewers about both the company and how do you see AI playing in the company.
So as I said, we're very early on. We're less than 1 year old as an organization so far. So it's early days for us. We're still in the mold of building teams out, you know, and and experimenting is the way that I put it. We believe we found a product market fit, and that's something that's been born on the sort of business we're doing and the sort of people that we've onboarded. I think the longer term vision, of course, is over the next 2 3 years is to launch all these multiple propositions that we spoke of, which is around lending and go deep into lending and in creating multiple different types of lending products. Because as I said, it's not traditional underwriting models, the traditional lending products might not work. So the next 2 3 years is to find very very customized and build very very customized models for the lending space. Similarly, do that for insurance. How do you underwrite an EV vehicle should be very different from what do you do from as an insurance from an ICE vehicle perspective. And then as I said, keep on adding more and more bits to this, create technology, or maybe around fleet management systems that or recommendation engines for consumers or fleet management systems to manage their fleet and their drivers, better. So the next 3 years, I see us really being able to build this platform to the extent that if anyone talks of clean mobility and the solution, Tapfin is sort of like the de facto name that you have to hit Tapfin for something, right? Uh, so essentially, that platform where almost the entire ecosystem of participants know that this is the place you go to for any sort of market access, for any sort of access to capital, or insurance, or any in multiple products, right? That's all like the 2 3 year plan. We also have plans of doing some on balance sheet lending, for which of course there's application processes, etc. that we will need to go through. Um, so the plan is also to have that, and because I think on balance sheet exposure gives you a certain different amount of confidence in creating your underwriting engines, right? So that is in a nutshell is a 3 year plan. A long term plan is quite ambitious, Arun. And this is especially where Pramod really comes in and is very very passionate about this. Is saying we want to be India's first green bank, right? Do I have the ability to build something where I can say, hey, green space, I'm the bank, right? So very long term vision, Arun, but that's where you want to be from a technology perspective. I almost want to be as ubiquitous as a credit scoring or a credit agency is, right? You want to take a loan in the lending ecosystem, you have to hit one of these, right? You have to hit TransUnion, for example, right? In India, TransUnion, Sibyl, or the few others, right? Experian, Equifax, something, right? Can I can I provide some insight to anyone who wants to deploy or get involved in the EV ecosystem, right? Can you send me a use case of how you want to use a particular vehicle? I can tell you what's the right OEM for you, right? Uh, can you tell me, that you deploying, you are deploying in, let's say, in Kanpur, for example, right? 50 fleet. What would might your economics look like, right? You might not, take a loan via the Tapfin platform. You might not get insurance via the Tapfin platform. But is there ability to help each and every individual in this ecosystem with some information, which could be a small guy, with the smallest fleet trying to decide which vehicle to buy, to the largest financial, institution trying to determine whether to give a loan to someone or not, right? Can Tapfin be that thing, be that ecosystem or the platform which provides that for everyone? That really is, Arun, between the three of us, those are really our large aims, right? Uh, Create an institution with legacy, possibly a green bank, which goes deep into sustainability. And then from this perspective, Tapfin as a tech product, or as a platform, be ubiquitous in the sustainability space with some sort of insight to any one large, small individual, bank. How is AI going to play a role? This cannot be done without AI. Right? The scale is so massive that you cannot have manual inputs. You cannot have very very small. Okay, it cannot rely on the brain of one or a few data engineers sort of sitting and solving problems, right? It will, AI will have to, and why I'm so excited about AI in this space is because it is so nascent, right? No one's figured out which is the right OEM in which city under all these conditions, right? Um, I I should be able to, as simple as that, saying I am going to deploy 15 two-wheeler vehicles in Kanpur for quick delivery, right? Now my system should be able to solve that problem for you, saying, okay, fine, buy these vehicles, this is what your cash flow is going to look like. Market efficiency is at X percentage. If you run at X percent, X plus 20% efficiency, this is what your cash flow look like. These are the right charging point operators. These are the existing charging points already in your city, out of which how many are functional, which is the right wattage for you. If you run for 3 years and then you want to redeploy, secondary market value is going to be like this. That's one question you asked, right? And your problem has been solved. Right now, you spend hours and hours, and then also then sort of say these are the lenders you come in. You spend hours just to find out which is the right asset for you and still have no comfort on it, right? Uh, and even the ICE industry is completely not there. You want to buy a vehicle, or you go to 10 different dealerships, you still don't know what are the right questions to ask, right? But I'm sure people do that now. I drive in, Bay Area, I drive 50 kilometers every day. Typically office thing on the weekend, I have a family of four doing this. I'm sure right now maybe I can come with some responses saying my recommendation engine, right? But that's a basic recommendation in what vehicle you should buy based on your use case. Right now, there is no history, there is no data that which sort of tells you, okay, for commercial use cases to that sort of customization, and then getting you a loan on the fly basis these sort of things. You pre-approve just because you asked a question. I think very very strong tool, or very very strong proposition that can be built out of it. Some of this could be my secret sauce I'm giving out, but it's all about execution.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you need multiple people solving this problem.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the kind of data they're looking at, right? And then imagine building so many machine learning models that do all of this modeling for you in almost near real time, right? So that is on
Yeah,
the backend side, and on the other side, you have very complicated these large language models that you're playing around
yeah,
with, which gives a very easy access, like a conversational AI type of an access to end user, somebody who doesn't want to worry about technology at all, right? I could be a small guy in Kanpur or any small city for that matter, trying to
yeah,
figure out exactly the question that you articulated. Which EV should I buy? Right? I want to do
yeah.
this is my use case. Which EV should I buy? And
Right, right.
your LLM should actually answer all those questions for me.
Agreed.
So that's
And and,
fantastic.
and
Yeah,
so that's the exciting bit, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
you have to make technology transparent, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Not everyone is well versed with technology or understands it inherently, right? I want to ask the question and get a response, right? It's that simple,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
The world's largest search engine relies on one text input, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So and that's the whole strength of it. And to be honest, India is doing really well. There's this, if you do some work on ONDC and you take a look at it, how that is facilitating, e-commerce in the country. Something called OCIN, which is an open credit enablement network. How that is in sort of trying to bring lenders into this ecosystem. So everyone's building those, rails and the infrastructure. And for me, that is really exciting. I think building the rails is the most exciting thing, right?
Yeah.
If you can build something on which people can build businesses on top of it, I think you created something which is massively valuable, right? Um, but that's where we are. That's what we want to build for the future.
So that's fascinating. I'm so glad that we spoke about this. This is such a impactful case, uh, and especially for a lot of emerging countries, right? I'm sure there are a lot of founders. We have viewers from all over the world, and there are a lot of emerging countries who probably could be inspired by an idea like yours if they're not already doing something in their country.
Right.
This could be very, very inspiring for a lot of people. Around employment generation, around people having access to capital, about sustainability. Uh, and those are three very big areas problems to solve. Superb.
Right.
So with that, we move to the fourth segment, and this is something that we call as the rapid fire round. So you have very limited time to to think and
Yeah.
answer the question. So are you set? Should we start the
Yeah.
rapid fire round? All right.
Yes. Yes. We
All right. So here's my first question. Chat GPT or Gemini? If you had to choose one for the rest of your life, what would you choose?
Chat GPT.
Okay. Second one. What is the most overrated AI hype right now?
uh, I hype right now. Uh, Creating art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I, I,
Okay.
I, I don't. I don't. Yeah. I don't know.
No, that's a good one. Yeah, I think that's the while it creates art, but yeah, of course, I mean human generated art versus AI
Yeah.
generated art. Yeah. So okay. The third one, in one sentence, define the future of AI in your field.
In one sentence, sorry. And AI is the future in sustainability.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because there's so much of information that you have, right? You cannot do it with manual
You
help. And
cannot do different models. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wonderful. What is one AI skill that everyone should learn and prepare for tomorrow?
Asking the right questions.
Okay, that's
Because
prompting in a way. Yeah, yeah.
not everyone can learn models or can do
Yeah,
modeling, and not everyone can have those skill sets. But if there's an input, what ask the right input? How do you ask those? Which is very difficult.
it is. It is. It is. All right. Wonderful. The last one. If AI could take over one of your daily tasks completely, what would it be?
I think regulatory compliances for now.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you guys are doing spending a lot of time on regulatory compliance, right? Every
Yeah,
state, every county or district that you work in is very different. So yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And probably there is another AI waiting for that, right? So there is.
So massive,
Yeah,
and I know. So India is from a regulatory perspective, it's not as difficult as maybe the US, because what you slightly said, every district, every state has its own financial. I think banks have their own regulation compliances. India is still driven by RBI. There are some local variants, but there are a lot of different ways. But GST, for example, is a state level thing, right? So there's so much
yeah,
filings and timelines, and it takes a lot of time, especially if you're a regular entity, then it's a lot of things to do, right?
yeah, yeah.
uh, so yeah, so that's a massive, I think, reg tech, which is regulatory tech, is a massive opportunity. Bank tech, reg tech, these are massive opportunities, and I think only AI can solve these, on the reg tech side. I'm aware of a few companies, I think, in the US who are doing some work on this.
Right, right. So wonderful, Aditya. So that brings us to the end of our talk show today. Aditya, so really thank you so much for spending time with our viewers and talking about your
Yeah,
company and the problem statement that you're solving and the kind of impact and legacy that you're trying to create. So wonderful, Aditya. Thank you for your time.
thank you so much. Thanks, Arun.